set right here.
The volunteers were shocked to see how much worse the tornado's damage was when they actually saw it in person.
Well, it was nothing like this. I mean, when we were in the flood in Montevideo, it was the people had time, to get their belongings and stuff out. This is just total devastation.
But the volunteers also found that the spirits were high here in Comfrey, even from residents like Travis Johnson, who narrowly escaped death when his home collapsed on him on Sunday.
I think it really helps having people from different communities coming in and helping out and showing that everybody cares, they're not going to tear this town upside down. I mean, we'll still have Comfrey. It'll still be here.
It's just amazing the attitudes you hear down here. It's similar to what we saw last year in Grand Forks, where the devastation was comparable, but people are seeming upbeat. They're just grateful it's not raining, and they spent the day going about trying to sift through their things. As we mentioned, there will be a community meeting tomorrow afternoon. We'll learn more about the plans to rebuild in Comfrey.
FEMA Director James Lee Witt is seeing the devastation firsthand today. Senators Rod Graham and Paul Wellstone are also in the area, touring. Donations are pouring in. Today, Watkins Incorporated of Winona donated $78,000 worth of cleaning products, shampoos, and soap. General Mills employees collected and donated more than 50,000 pounds of the company's products today. We have a team of reporters still covering the twisters, beginning with WCCO's Mike Walsher leading the coverage in St. Peter, rather. I'm sorry. Mike?
That's right, Don. I can tell you the spirit of the people here in St. Peter is strong and vibrant. Same goes for the good folks in Comfrey, who are vowing to rebuild that town this evening. The damage here will run into many tens of millions, but they're making great progress, as you can see from the volunteers, the hard-working people across the street here, clearing out debris in some of the worst damaged area in St. Peter, and crews have also been in town restoring power. James Lee Witt, the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, toured both St. Peter and Comfrey. He told us he had rarely seen such massive tornado destruction. He said it's very fortunate only 2 people died. He said homeowners, farmers, and business people can get help by calling 1-800-462-9029 to tap into federal assistance programs.
But people will go through a period of shock, and they'll go through a period of frustration down and try to work with the community and the state and make sure those people have an opportunity to get in and get the help they may need, whether it's counseling or whatever it is. But it's almost like a bomb gone off.
I tell you, it's very gratifying. There are so many volunteers flooding into the tornado-ravaged communities. Among the hardest working are students from area high schools. Hundreds of them are getting valuable lessons, not in the classroom, but out in the field, clearing debris. And our team coverage continues this evening with Bill Hudson, who caught up with some of those students near the center.
Pulling timbers from a muddy field or picking insulation strewn across the landscape aren't taught in the classrooms, but they're lessons in civic involvement high school students are learning well.
These people look like they need a lot of help, and we figure, my house personally didn't get hurt or anything, but I felt I needed to help my community.
It didn't matter the way it came down and picked it up, and we actually...
People like Linda and Kim Cunningham are in need of that help after losing everything they own. So today, out of the blue, a group of LeSueur High School kids picked up acres of debris.
Couldn't have done it without them and all the other people in our town and other little towns that I can't tell you what it means to us.
For many tornado victims, rebuilding as soon as possible is critical. The owner of this business in Lonsdale, for instance, was just 2 weeks away from selling his shop. He says he's got about that much time to get a new building up. Rebuilding has already begun on this lumber yard, and thanks to so many volunteers, the Cunninghams won't be far behind.
Just want to say thank you to the town of Lee Center and all the little towns around us that are taking care of us and sending help to clean all this up. Thank you. It means more to us than you'll ever know.
In Le Center, Bill Hudson, WCCO 4 News.
And if you would like to volunteer, and I know many of you do, the hotline number to call is 1-800-657-3504. Also in St. Peter, the Kind Veterinary Clinic is putting out the word. It is sheltering lost and stray animals. You can bring strays here or come to try to locate a lost pet. The clinic also is giving out free cat and dog food to storm victims who need those items, and it will board any animals whose owners' homes are not livable. One other note, the state's $28 million emergency aid package goes before the legislature next week. And Don, it'll be a really big weekend here in St. Peter. They're expecting up to 5,000 volunteers here tomorrow. That's half the town's population. They're going to bring them in 3 different shifts to clear debris. And then, of course, on Sunday, everyone here will take some time to pause and mark the 1-week anniversary of these devastating tornadoes.
Police are out in full force tonight in St. Peter, Minnesota. The goal to prevent people from stealing the few belongings the tornado victims have left. WCCO's Frederica Freiberg is our lead reporter tonight in St. Paul. Fred?
Don, the city of St. Peter is likely the safest place in all of the Midwest tonight. That is because police officers from across Minnesota are blanketing this city to keep it that way. When was the last time you saw 10 or so police cars respond to a suspected property crime stop?
Every time we make a turn around a block, we bump into each other.
There are so many officers in St. Peter. Looters and scammers don't stand much chance.
You got ID that shows you live up in here.
To keep the riffraff out, residents must show passes to get through police checkpoints.
Our residents went through a very traumatic experience, and we want to give them a comfort level of security now and say, we've got a lot of people out here that are watching over us so we can get a little sleep.
And while St. Peter sleeps, 60 police officers from departments across the state sweep the city. Plus, that posse gets even more punch with the state patrol overhead and ground cover from the National Guard. The nighttime hours here also bring out the dogs and even bike patrols, courtesy Albert Lee PD. So if anyone is where they're not supposed to be or even suspected of being out of place, law enforcement converged on St. Peter has them covered.
We owe them people a lot, and if they ever have an event, we better send people.
Now, while City of St. Peter police officers have been working around the clock as well since this disaster struck, they did lose 2 of their squad cars to this tornado.
The National Weather Service revised their survey based on aerial photography. They were up in the choppers. That first tornado that hit Comfrey, a path length of 62 miles. 1 tornado a mile wide on the ground. Almost unprecedented, certainly for late March. The most tornado-prone metropolitan areas in the nation, Huntsville, oddly enough, ranks #1. According to a company called Energy Analysis, which has done studies since 1950. #3 on the list, Oklahoma City. Minneapolis is 8th. St. Paul is 12th. 1,100 acres affected since 1950.
Thousands of volunteers are pitching in to help their neighbors after spring twisters. Here's the latest. Almost 5,000 volunteers showed up today to help clean up debris in the city of St. Peter. Churches there are preparing for Palm Sunday services, and the mayor of Grand Forks, North Dakota will speak to St. Peter residents tomorrow to tell them what it's like to rebuild after a disaster. Our Jim King is in St. Peter tonight with more. Jim?
Thousands and thousands of volunteers came here to help. There's also a sense of community spirit within the church community here. The Catholics of the Church of St. Peter, they'll be going to the First Lutheran Church tomorrow for services, so there's a tremendous amount of cooperation going on. It also will be a week ago tomorrow that the tornado, 1.25 miles wide, came through here and just ravaged this town of St. Peter. So tomorrow will be a time to remember and also a time to pray.
The bell won't chime at the Church of St. Peter. There will be no music, no services, and a week ago Sunday may possibly have been the last service at the church, at least in this building. Yes, the building may have to be demolished, but one thing you can't take away are the memories.
I was an altar boy here at St. Peter under Father Ryan when he was here, and confessed my first sins and made my first communion, was confirmed here. Oh, just memories. It's sad.
Sunday will be a time for prayer, but Saturday was a day for work. close to 5,000 volunteers descended upon St. Peter. It was a great show of community support.
Proud to be part of it. I mean, I feel like sometimes I just look around and I kind of gawk because I can hardly believe the devastation here.
To say that residents appreciated the help would be a tremendous understatement.
Just say thank you. I mean, how do you tell people that are helping you restore your life? I mean,
the majority of volunteers worked from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m., but many were still working as the sun went down.
And there's so much work that still needs to be done. People came from all over. Obviously, a lot of them came from the Twin Cities. We did run into some folks who came from Colorado to help out. We mentioned close to 5,000 people. The exact number, 4,912. And tomorrow, which is Sunday, there are 2,500 that are set up.
Well, the spring twisters in southern Minnesota have left an indelible mark on our memories. There have been a lot of moving pictures, but the toppled church steeple in the Gustavus Adolphus campus may be a lasting image for St. Peter residents. It served as a beacon for so long in the town of 10,000. This morning, church bells are once again ringing in St. Peter, and WCCO's Chris Otson is standing by with more. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Dave. You know, one thing St. Peter is really known for are its many churches. Unfortunately, many have been damaged. You can see one across the street from me, that St. Peter's Evangelical Lutheran Church, their roof completely blown off. Across the street here at Trinity Lutheran Church, however, they received more minor damage. They do not have power this morning. You can probably hear the whir of the generator behind me. They also sustained some damage to their beautiful stained glass windows. But here on this Palm Sunday, 1 week after the tornado hit, church services are being held. Now, church services were held by light coming through those beautiful stained glass windows, also by candlelight. Pastors Scott Fuller and Eric Natwick are presiding over these services, and overall their message this morning is about having hope and also acknowledging questions many St. Peter residents have of why did this tragedy happen to me?
Wrestle with faith. Wrestle with God, asking, what is happening? Why is this happening, God? And some of those why questions are, why not me and why my neighbor?
Just a few seconds.
Or the opposite.
Many people, I think, are glad to have these services this morning after an entire week of physically healing the town. Now they are healing their spirit this morning. And joining me now is Pastor Eric Natwick's wife, Mary Natwick. Nice to see you this morning.
Thank you. Good to see you.
I was listening to part of that sermon, and I suppose many people wonder, you know, the tornado hit my home, spared another person's home. Are you hearing that a lot from residents in St. Peter?
Absolutely. A lot, like you said earlier, emotionally is what we're really dealing with so much. And for all of us, we look around our town and it's so different, but for some of us that have been spared, we're really dealing with the guilt of why we were spared, and we can go home at night and have a hot shower and turn on our lights. And so it's a whole spectrum of feelings that we're all working through, and it's starting to hit home even harder now as the week's gone by.
And how can people work through this? I know there's no definitive answers, but what is the message for people to try to cope?
Well, for so many of us, being here together today is we're realizing so much how we all need each other, and that all of us that have been spared have been working so hard this week to help others that have been hit. And we realize that we are all in it together, because just all of us together this morning in church, just to sit and look at each other and realize that we are all here and we have all been spared, and that humans and the love for us and God's love for all of us is what really matters.
The most important thing, and I understand you have a fellowship hall where people are gathering, telling their stories this morning?
That's correct.
Part of the healing process.
It is, and it's something that we need to do, and you need to say, not just once, but over and over again, and just draw strength from each other.
Mary, good luck to you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And Dave, we will be speaking to some of those people in the fellowship hall who will be going there after the services and telling their own stories about what happened. It's such an important part of this process to try to heal.
All right, Chris, are they inviting other denominations into that church? Because I know a lot of other churches are in worse shape.
Right. At Trinity Lutheran, they are not. It's Lutheran services here, but just up the road at First Lutheran Church, they are having their Lutheran services now. Then at 11 o'clock, the Catholics are borrowing that church to have their worship on Palm Sunday. They'll also be talking together about inventing also about what's been happening to them. So it's been a big community effort here.
Kathy Wurzer spent the day in St. Peter today and joins us now with more. Kathy?
Well, Jim, as a matter of fact, I'm in kind of an automobile graveyard of sorts. We're up by the St. Peter High School, and this is where all the really badly damaged cars and trucks were towed after last weekend's tornadoes. Now, this place might seem really eerie and ghostly, but today we found a lot of signs of hope and many signs that life is starting to return back to normal here in St. Peter. Here are some examples. Now, 2 elementary schools here in town will start classes tomorrow morning. The Red Cross, which has been so helpful in aiding the victims and helping coordinate cleanup, it's closing down one of its 3 service centers, and 90% of the homes and businesses in St. Peter have power tonight. That's good news. Well, townspeople say the outpouring of support has been just fabulous. The army of volunteers that have come to St. Peter to help clean up have done a great job. And one of those who knows just how important support is Grand Forks Mayor Pat Owens, who was in St. Peter today.
I just can't get over the devastation here, though.
It's amazing, and when you look at the path that
Sadly, Pat Owens has seen a lot of devastation. As mayor of Grand Forks, she saw her town nearly swallowed by floodwaters or go up in flames last year. This year, an eerily similar experience for Owens, only it was hundreds of miles away, and that's what pulled her to St. Peter.
During our flood, I just couldn't cry. There was so much to do, I could not cry, and I'm one who gets emotional at times. But when I saw your city on TV last week, I cried. And I cried for the 2 lives that were lost, and also for what I knew that you would have to go through.
Owens offered advice and a sympathetic ear as she toured St. Peter, then spoke to townspeople at a local church.
You'll go through frustration, you'll go through anger, you'll go through hurt, you'll go through blame. And don't be afraid to tell another person when you're hurting.
But for many, Palm Sunday services in St. Peter provided more comfort than Mayor Owens ever could. Parishioners at Trinity Lutheran worship by candlelight and sunlight.
This kind of a situation draws us closer together, and it draws us closer to the real meaning of life.
Meanwhile, across town, Catholics worshipped at First Lutheran because their own church was destroyed.
I grew up in the old school where we didn't even associate with non-Catholics. And so, yeah, it doesn't feel strange because that has gone. That's part of the past.
And this Thursday, Catholics and Lutherans will hold a service and share communion together, which we've been told that's never happened before in St. Peter.
The Minnesota House today unanimously passed a nearly $28 million relief package to aid victims of last week's powerful storms. The Senate is expected to vote on the same kind of bill tomorrow. For more on the recovery taking place in southern Minnesota, let's go to WCCO's Kathy Wurzer live in St. Peter, where kids went back to school today. That's got to be a sign of good things to come.
Well, it absolutely is, Don. As a matter of fact, things went very smoothly, all things considered, this first day back to class. Kids kindergarten through 6th grade went to class today, half-day classes at St. Peter's 2 elementary schools. This one, South Elementary, and another one across town. Junior and senior high school students will go to classes next week in the afternoons because the senior high was so heavily damaged by the tornado. So let's tell you what happened today. Youngsters were greeted by teachers and a volunteer group of mental health counselors, all in an effort to help students deal with the emotional aftermath of the tornado. It was even tougher for kids at South Elementary because one of the students, 6-year-old Dustin Schneider, died in the storm. The goal today, get kids talking about their emotions.
Like adults, I think some come back right away and cope and deal with it, and others struggle. And so we're going to have to really look for those kids and help them, and that's our goal today.
Meanwhile, the goal today at another school nearby Gustavus Adolphus College was to clean out dorm rooms. Students in 3 dorms were allowed to come back and get their things, what's left of them anyway. One young woman even found her fish bowl intact, and yeah, the fish still alive. Students boxed their things and were shipped back to a local church parking lot where many parents and friends were waiting to load up cars and vans. The students' reactions today? Relief.
A lot of worries coming in, but when you see them get off the bus, I think they've connected with their friends and their roommates and much higher spirits.
Let me tell you something, what a difference a week makes. The cleanup efforts here have been fantastic, both on campus and here in St. Peter.
It's time now for Bill Hudson to step in here. He says architects from around the state are now pitching in to help. Bill?
They are, Don Amelia. You know, there's growing concern that many of St. Peter's historic buildings may be demolished prematurely without second opinions. But even repairs could threaten a building's historic character. So architects are giving their time to preserve what the tornadoes had threatened to take away. Among the saddest losses from the tornado which swept through St. Peter is the loss of history. Buildings dating back to the Civil War were left tattered or toppled. Preservationists obviously want to prevent the loss of history. They fear that many building owners are being pressured into demolition. They hope that architects stepping in at this time can prevent some of that loss.
The purpose of this meeting is to team up architects with properties and property owners.
The Minnesota Historical Society enlisted some 30 architectural firms to assist building owners like Don Ostrom. His 110-year-old home suffered roof, porch, and structural damage when the twister toppled a giant elm.
But we'll probably want to design it in a somewhat new way now, and we want to design a new breezeway so that it'll be kind of a sun porch for us.
Architect Rob Meese will help suggest ways to retain the home's 1880s character, like stained glass, hardwood floors, and staircase, despite extensive repairs.
St. Peter's an important part of Minnesota history, and the houses, the buildings are enduring signs of what the community is about.
The state aid package includes $1 million in what's called gap funding. That's to pay for special touches on some of these historic homes, like porch spindles and columns, things that normal insurance policies may not cover, despite those items being historically significant to a building's charm.
Today, the House approved more than $27 million in state aid. And it's not only the politicians helping the tornado survivors. Mariah Tamanaha struck her own deal with the Salvation Army. The 7-year-old wanted to send Easter baskets to kids in tornado-stricken areas. So the Bloomington girl collected Easter baskets, and now the Salvation Army is going to help deliver them. Mariah will join them in Comfrey tomorrow morning to help hand them out.
Well, family and friends say goodbye to a little boy killed during the spring twisters 2 weeks ago. 6-year-old Dustin Schneider was killed when a tornado pulled him out of his family's van and tossed him 150 yards. His parents were critically injured, and today Dustin's funeral was held at the First Lutheran Church of St. Peter. You can contribute to the Dustin Schneider Memorial by dropping off a check at any TCF bank. And help is on the way for the people left homeless after the local twisters, and they certainly need a lot of help.
You know, you and I were both in St. Peter last weekend, seeing how some of the progress was going, and really, it's been great, but so much is left to do at this point. Now, remember those travel trailers used during the floods last year in East Grand Forks and Grand Forks? Well, those soon house St. Peter residents. Here's the latest. 18 trailers have been moved to the DNR headquarters just outside of New Ulm. They still have to go through a state inspection before they'll be moved to St. Peter. Although just about everything has been damaged at the Nicolet County Fairgrounds, there will be a county fair this year in St. Peter. When the fair board met earlier this week, people from all over the county showed up to say they still want a fair this year in St. Peter. Well, you know, this Easter is a difficult holiday for many St. Peter residents.
No doubt about it. They're still reeling from 200-mile-an-hour winds that demolished much of that community 2 weeks ago tonight. But as WCCO's Chris Ottson reports, some residents are finding hope through prayer.
It used to be this church was filled with song and prayer. Now, St. Peter Lutheran Church is destroyed.
The sanctuary itself is small, and it's very intimate, and it's the one that you never felt far from your people.
For decades, Easter services were held right here. But now that the sanctuary is in ruins and the roof has been blown away, there is little hope for rebuilding. The old is being combined with the new as residents worship in the fellowship hall.
So many blessings still here.
And so many people anxious to hear some encouraging words.
Jesus' resurrection makes us imagine what is possible.
St. Peter residents are finding there is renewal in their daily lives.
And I think coming to this house of worship, this sanctuary, reminded them that life goes on.
This will be the place of worship for many Sundays to come. But residents are not feeling despair over the loss of their old church. Instead, many are looking forward with hope for building new memories.
You know, you just go on with it, and we just have to think positively on what the future can hold.
In St. Peter, Chris Otson, WCCO 4 News.